We're going to be looking at creating your organisation chart, or if you've already got one, retuning it, refining it. And I'm going to talk about it in three different perspectives, if you like. We're going to talk about it, looking at it today, how your business is today. If you had the reset model, which is if you had to start all over again tomorrow, but your organisation had to be the same size, how would you structure it? And lastly, the 5-year model of, looking at where your business is going to be in 5 years' time. How's it going to look and what are the needs going to be? Before I dive into that, I just want to spend a quick minute on the why create an organisation chart. Because I think it's important before we do any of these things, we understand why we're doing them. Thinking about a sports team, like a football team. Lots of players on a football team, and they've all got very specific positions that they're playing in. Right? You don't have a quarterback thinking he's a receiver. It just doesn't happen. Okay, the quarterback knows what his job is, he knows what he has to do, and he doesn't get caught up thinking he's a receiver or a linebacker. So, same with your business organisation chart. It's about giving everyone a role so they clearly know what their role is, and everyone else knows what their role is, so there's clarity in who's doing what. That's basically it. The other benefit of doing your organisation chart, particularly when we start looking at the 5-year model, is it enables you to plan and understand who you should be hiring and when. Right? Sometimes we just get busy, so I think we need another body in here, let's hire someone, without always being proactive in knowing, what's this going to look like in the end game, and let's make sure we get the right player in to fill the right seat. So with that in mind, let's look at the three perspectives here. Number one is today's model. So actually, I'm just going to flip forward for a second, just to give you a glimpse on what the organisational chart might look like, so you can have an idea of what we're talking about. Here's a really generic model of an organisation chart. I've got up here the president, or it could be the CEO or the general manager. I don't really care what you call them. It's not really that important. In fact, none of these titles are important. Don't get caught up on titles of what you have to call things. It doesn't really matter as long as everyone understands what the roles are. Now, in most businesses, there should be a sales department, we should have a marketing department, we should have operations, which is the day-to-day business, finance and admin, and HR. And I've got another one off to the side there with a question mark, because every business is a little differently. Maybe that's the research and development, maybe that's the inventory, who knows? I mean, you've got to decide on what the main categories or headings are within your business. And then you'll see we've got different branches down below that. Whoever is in charge of operations may, in this case, have got a plant manager and a purchasing agent that's responsible, reports to them. And under the plant manager, we've got someone in maintenance, someone safety, and a superintendent. Under the superintendent, we have an operator. So you can see there that in this business, there's very clear roles in a variety of areas. So once people understand which box they're in, you don't have the marketing person thinking they're in accounts receivable over here under finance and getting mixed up in what they do. Let me come back to that. Stage one, before you map out that, let's understand how to go about that. So today's model says if we were to draw one of those organisation charts exactly how it is today, Bill does this, Sue does that, Mary does that, how would you draw it out? And I recommend that as a starting point. Don't try and make it perfect in the way you think it should be. Draw it out exactly how it is today. Once we've got that, we can then look at the reset model, and this is one of my favourite places to start with the business. The reset model is, as I mentioned, if you had to set up your business again tomorrow and it had to be exactly the same size as it is today, how would you set it up? Now, the important thing to keep in mind when doing this is you've got to do it without thinking about the people you've got today. Think about rehiring completely new staff. I'm not saying you're going to do that, but I want you to think about it without thinking about people in mind. The reason you want to do that is you've shaped your business today around, quite possibly around the people that you've got. If Joe is good at doing websites and also doing sales, well, he probably is in the IT role and in the sales role also. Whereas if you were to set up your business tomorrow, maybe you wouldn't have the same person doing IT and sales because it's got some drawbacks. Now, you have to think about it for your business. I'm not saying there's one way to do it because there certainly isn't. There's lots of ways. But think about in the ideal world, like in the dream state, if I could restart my business tomorrow, how would I set it up? What would be the key roles that I would want to hire for? Once you've done that, you can now have a picture of how it is today and then how the ideal would look. Then we can go one step further. Thinking about the vision you've got for your business, what the goals are, you've hopefully put some thought into that. Thinking about the 5-year model. Hopefully in 5 years the business might have grown a bit, there might be a few extra people on board. We want to have a picture of what's that organisation chart going to look like. So you start to get a pathway in place. You can have how it looks today, how it ideally should look today, and then how it's going to look in 5 years' time. That enables us to start making some decisions. If we're looking at the how it is today versus the ideal today, and we're seeing, gee, we're a long way off there, there's some big differences, then we can start to ask the question, okay, what would we have to do to move today to be more like the ideal setting? Would it be around retraining some people to put them in different positions? Would it be about just putting someone in a different position, taking something off their plate and rehiring for that special position? You can start to see where the holes and opportunities are in your business. And likewise with the 5-year plan, once you've got a picture on what that model looks like, when you come to hire the next person, you can say, okay, now is the time to split out that role. We've currently got, Jane doing both of these roles. Now we've got to split it out and hire someone to take over this part of Jane's role while she still does this part. Now let me give you an example of what that might look like. Flipping over to my generic example here, and I have a template of this that's on I think it's a Word file or a PowerPoint, which I can send to you if you'd like a starting point. But let's say this is your organisation chart that you've drawn up, but the reality is you've only got 5 people in your organisation, right? You'll see how many boxes have I got here. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17 boxes, but only 5 people in your organisation. So that means that there is several people that are in several boxes. And typically what happens is we've got if you're a 5-person organisation, you as the president, I'm going to say this is you. You're also probably marketing. You're also probably sales. You're also probably HR. And you're probably also head of operations. You might have Bob that does this, and maybe Mary's down here. Maybe Bob's also safety, and maybe John is superintendent and maintenance. All right, let's say that's how it looked, for example. So as you grow, you might say, you know what would be a good example? You might say, you know what, I'm finding like 50% of my time is tied up with sales here. I haven't got any time to spend in HR or marketing to develop the brand of the company, but we are growing. So you might say, you know what, next hire needs to be a salesperson. If I hire a salesperson, let's say you hire Sue, now Sue's name is going to go under sales. Now I've just freed up 50% of my time, I can focus on other areas. And you might be able to map out and know your next 3 hires that you have to make, which has advantages in a couple of ways. One, you can plan ahead of time, be hiring before you need the person, which is a great idea, so you're not scrambling. And secondly, you can be on the lookout today for what that ideal person looks like, because you know that in probably 6 or 12 months' time, you're going to need to hire a safety person, because Bob's pretty flat out as well, and if you grow anymore, Bob just won't be able to handle safety. So you could be looking today, and you never know, when you look for these things, they tend to show up. So this is really important. The other side to understand with your organisation chart is that everyone needs to know what it looks like. When all the players know what their role is, they know who to go to when they've got questions around a certain aspect of the business. Now let's say you hire Sue for sales, but Bob wasn't completely sure as to whether you were still running sales or whether Sue was doing it. What does that look like there? Well, if you've got it clearly mapped out, then Bob knows exactly who to go to for what, and there's no confusion. You have clearer lines of communication. One last step, and I'm not going to go into detail here on this one. There's a separate video on this. But each of these roles need to have a very clear position contract. Right? Each player needs to understand this role has certain accountabilities with it, and this is how your performance is going to be measured. And those accountabilities get made up by what are the core things that have to happen within this role in order for the company to operate sustainably. So with that, I'll just flip back here to our first chart. Your starting point is looking at today's model. How does it operate today? Then move to your reset model, which is, okay, if I could reset it up as we are today, how would I do that? Disregarding people and skills. And then lastly, what's it going to look like in 5 years? Have fun with it.